Hey everybody, this is Stephen Hermann with the Vet Podcast, and I am very excited to have with me Karyn Buxman, who we met almost a decade ago. And hey, I wore the Mizzou shirt today. You know, we're fellow Mizzou alums, and it had a tough loss against Alabama this past weekend. This podcast might be a week or so behind that, but anyways, having a good football program, fun sports program, and pretty partial to Mizzou. You've had children that have lived here in Columbia, Missouri, so a lot of connections we have going on. So very, very excited about that. So let me introduce you the proper way, right? Let's do a little bit of that, get that out of the way here. All right. Karyn Buxman, RN, MSN, CSP, CPAE, is a TEDx speaker, Hall of Fame humorist, and nurse turned neurohumorist who lives at the intersection of humor and the brain. A global authority on applied humor, Karyn has spoken for organizations such as the Mayo Clinic, NASA, and the U.S. Air Force. Her mission to help healthcare professionals, including veterinarians, pretty important for this one, right? Use humor as a strategic tool to reduce stress, improve communication, and build resilience. She's serious about humor and passionate about helping healers heal themselves. M-I-Z?
C-O.
All right. That's awesome. What a resume. I knew when we met a long time ago, she's had that we was reconnected recently, right? It was just reconnected recently. And I like I said, awesome book here. Lead with levity, right? I mean, great. This is your book. You wrote some wonderful words in here. I have kept this on my nightstand. I like to find inspiration in it. And so in my turning point in my own career, right, selling a business and starting a software business, I was like, I just kind of reached out to people I met in the past and I was like, just a great time to connect. And especially with what's going on in the veterinary space. Like after a decade of experience with veterinarians on my side, coaching, consulting, and helping them start businesses, it was just like, you always need that extra spark. I can deliver numbers, I can deliver business plans, give some inspiration, but sometimes it's like, you just need that extra expert. And just like looking at your book, I'm like, I think you have this like missing link to what that could be, and that neurohumorist. And that we're going to get into that people are going to walk away from. So, Karyn, again, awesome to have you on today.
Thank you. So happy to be here. We got lots to talk about.
We do have lots to talk about, and it's going to be really good. Goal today is for the listener to end up with some actionable items today, right? What are a few things they could do to improve what they have going on? And at the end of the day, we believe that you need help too. It's helpful to have someone help you be accountable, actionable on those things. Karyn has a great business that can provide that too. We'll talk about that at the end of the talk today. Let's get into some questions here, right? Humorous, I would say, is probably a new term to a lot of people, right? So when you think about neurohumorist, can you define that? Like, what is that? What inspired you to become a neurohumorist? So a couple different nuances there, right? Give me a definition and why? Why neurohumorist?
Neurohumor. I actually started my journey with humor at the University of Missouri. Was teaching in nursing and enjoying that, and wanted to continue my education, so went back to grad school, had to do a research project, was looking at something focused on adolescent adults and eating behaviors, and stumbled across a little article about a nurse researcher who had researched humor. And it was just like this whack upside the head. And I will tell you that there was a moment where I was thinking, oh my gosh, I could study something interesting and fun, and this wouldn't be so painful over the next 2.5 years. And so it was the idea of fun and entertainment that brought me in, but it was the power of humor that has kept me there for over 30 years now. And it is so powerful. I don't get why people aren't just on their rooftops shouting about this. So I'm doing that for them. I dissect humor, so I have to.
Why aren't people shouting it? I'm going to ask you that question. Why?
So, the last 10 years was also this deep dive. We have changed our technology. We've known forever that humor is a whole brain process, but with our digital tools, or analog tools, we weren't really able to understand a lot of it. But now that we have the digital mechanisms that we have, we can understand so much more. And when you look at that intersection of humor and the brain, it gives us not only the power to make people laugh, but to influence them and to improve their health and well-being. And that's what I'm all about.
gives us energy too, right? Like your own personal self. It's not just the person you're across from or the room you're with. It gives you that energy, the positive thing. What was that? How many muscles does it take to smile versus frown? Is that kind of like, maybe a little bit, it's a little bit,
That is true. And that's part of the concept that people think when I talk about humor or they read about humor in the workplace, they kind of just laugh it off a little bit, no pun intended, but they think it's about laughter. They think it's about comedy. And one of my greatest insights over my decades of research was that entertainment is what we typically think of as the purpose. And with the success of that, how do we measure our success? It's by making the other person laugh. But I recognized there were two other purposes. One, as I mentioned, influence. One, as I mentioned, well-being. And when we influence others, whether that's persuading them, negotiating, inspiring, educating, all of those different things that take place in a veterinarian's life and in their livelihood, we're not measuring the success of humor by how much we make the other person laugh. We're looking at what is the quality and quantity of those relationships, and did we achieve our desired outcome? And in terms of wellness, again, the success isn't how much we made another person laugh. It's about, where are we or that other person on the spectrum in terms of our wellness and our health and our happiness. And this is a very holistic look at that. And again, it's not about being funny. It's about seeing funny, having that filter that allows us to really leverage laughter and harness humor.
Is a breakdown, it breaks someone down too a bit, right? It kind of lets them be more honest, more open, right? And you get that laugh out of somebody where they're able to have a better relationship in the workplace too. Is that big part of it?
Yeah. We see today from a brain perspective that people I use this metaphor that people's brains are on fire, but our brain's number one purpose is to keep us safe, keep us alive. And so it's constantly searching for threat, and it focuses on that. It's wired for that. But we reinforce that with whether it's the news, drama, political climates, global climates, climates in your household, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
The more we do that, the more we wire our brains to see threat. And when we're in that space, resistance goes up. And that might be resistance between wanting to communicate with another person, to have a relationship with another person, even to help another person. I think something that to me was so telling is that with increased pressure in our lives, we squeeze out any room in our cognitive functioning part of our brain, our executive functioning. And so it has the effect of making us dumber. It can drop our IQ points. It can make us less likable, less appealing. But I think even more important for veterinarians is that it also squeezes out our ability to be empathetic and to be compassionate and to practice self-care.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that you don't want to be. It's that we honestly cannot see those opportunities, even if they're wiggling in our face. And it's nothing about desire. It's just that our brain doesn't have the room in that cognitive part. So how can we give your listeners and your viewers tools to help them recapture that resilience, recapture that problem-solving ability and creativity, and recapture that empathy and compassion and even love for self? Because we know that you look at the numbers, there are way too many veterinarians we've lost because life just got too hard and they didn't have the capacity to navigate the hard times.
It's a saturated sponge. You can't hold any more water. And what you're saying here, humor can help wring some of that sponge out, provide some space, helps process, as you've said, stress, trauma, and compassion fatigue. You mentioned that in our conversations, is compassion fatigue. And I think that's one of the top terms in in veterinary space is compassion fatigue. And so as you look at that and think about it, as you got, and this is science backed too, right? I think we're talking to scientists here. I mean, veterinarians are scientists. They like science, right? It's like when the interesting in business, it's like, well, they go, where's the science based on that? Like, it's just over time, these averages worked out, right? It's kind of like science, but it's not exactly like science. It doesn't prove out the same way. So, thinking about that, what in your experience, what are some, stories or success stories you've seen where that sponge is full? Like, how is someone, used to, how do they get that space back? Like, what do they do in your years of experience?
Yeah. So much of what we see in terms of the overwhelm, the stress, the strain is from a gap. The gap between expectations, the way we thought things would be, what we visualized what life was going to be like, what being a veterinarian would be like, and the reality. And we look for ways to close that gap. And there's lots of part of that is planning in millimeters and looking at the reality and looking at, are these expectations realistic? How do you want to deal with them? But in terms of humor, I've looked at 4 primary ways that this has helped people in general. And one is distraction. Now, I'm not saying go put your head in the sand. However, there are times where things are just out of our control. We don't have the capacity to change things. You can be sitting on the freeway in a gridlock and stuck, and you can either be putting yourself in more of a brain threat and having this wonderful cascade of neurotransmitters that it's going to increase your cortisol and increase your epinephrine and inflammation and cloud your judgment.
Those
and
stupid
all of
drivers that cause this.
That's right. Next thing you know, you're involved in road rage. Or you can practice humor visualization. This is something you're not doing for anybody else. It's this distraction of looking for things that are amusing to you, whimsical to you, because all we need is a brain break. The more and the longer we experience the humor, great, but sometimes it only takes a few moments to just snap us out of that or kind of wring the sponge a little bit. Yeah. And so maybe that is tuning into a radio satellite channel that's comedy. Maybe it's phoning a friend. Maybe it's reminiscing about humorous stories in your mind. But that little bit of distraction, the body can't tell the difference between something that's actually happening and what you're imagining in terms of the physiology where this is involved. And so if you are distracting yourself with a bit of humor, you've given yourself a brain break until you have the ability to take some kind of action. Another is reframing, and reframing is really important. We know that that's probably our most powerful psychological means of seeing things in a different way so that, again, we can solve a problem or we can act upon it. But it also takes up the most energy in our brains in terms of coping mechanisms. And so the brain is a little resistant to that. The brain is lazy. The brain, it's like a stream. It wants to take the easiest path,
Okay.
And so the cool thing about humor is that humor is taking disconnected, disassociated dots and putting them together. It's reframing them in a way that amuses and delights us. But the more you do that, the more neuroplasticity you create. And that reframing comes easier. I grew up in Missouri, and I remember when I was 8 years old and I'm out raking leaves with my dad and my brother, and we're, having a fun time. And as a joke, I grabbed my dad's glasses and I perched them on my nose, and I was walking around with my nose up in the air. And I looked up and I said, "Oh my gosh, look, there's an airplane." And my brother said, "So what?" And I said, "Well, you can hear them, but you can't usually see them." And my dad looked at me and he pulled off the glasses and he goes, "Yeah, you can." And that's how the next day I ended up in Dr. Plowman's ophthalmologist office. And when I walked out with my stylish cat eye, tortoiseshell colored glasses, I'll tell you, I looked around And I was stunned because the red building we'd walked into had bricks, and the green tree that was overshading our car had leaves. And
Yeah.
I was seeing all these things that were there all the time, but I hadn't seen them because I didn't have the right lens. And the more we practice this, the more we rewire, the more our brain shows us these opportunities. Because I'll tell you, Stephen, so many times people say, but you don't understand. There's nothing funny happening in my life. And what I want to tell you from a neurohumorist point of view is that there are opportunities for humor around you every day, but your brain isn't showing them to you because it's too full. It's saturated. So how can we do that? Reframing.
Yeah, Karyn, I think I can hear the objections, right? To what, the objection, we all have them, and it's well, if you're saying the sponge is oversaturated, and I'm a veterinarian, I own my business, how am I even going to take time to do this? But if I've heard from you from the beginning, you're going, if you got this defensive mechanism already up in your brain, your processing power is decreased. You don't think you can take on more. And it's maybe that you can take on more, and that saturated really is more because of you can hold more to a degree, or you're not holding as much as you think, actually, right? You think your sponge is saturated, but maybe it's not. Am I saying that right? Is that
Yes.
crude
And
way of me interpreting the expert here?
I think you're right. And I think that there is that resistance, that pushback, because don't want to, I'm going to pause here.
Yeah, you're good.
Hello.
You're good. We can come back onto that.
Because we get that pushback, we get that resistance because it's a little bit more energy in our brain, or it takes practice to rewire our brain a little bit until we can't create a new habit in our brain until we cut off past neural pathway and create a new one. And so there's that little bit of resistance, and it's like, oh, that's going to take time. That's going to take energy. I don't have the time. I don't, But if we look at, but what's the payoff?
What's the payoff?
If you can recapture that cognitive capacity, if you can get back that problem-solving ability, if you can get back that empathy, if you can get back that compassion, if you make those connections with other people, because as you and I were talking at another time, one of the things that we notice in terms of relationships, and isn't a veterinarian business all about relationships, is it so often,
every minute.
And we miss cues from other people. We overlook what's important to somebody, or we might miss something that would really help us solidify that connection, lower that other person's resistance, so that they can hear what it is that you're recommending, or the treatment that you're suggesting, or being co-creators in the care for their pet. But what is going on in your brain is also going on in their brain. And so, I mean, you think about when somebody brings in their pet, was AKA a member of their family.
Right.
I remember my sister, when she was also living in Missouri during a winter evening, was in a car accident and had a head injury, and they took her to the ER, and she kept saying, "Oh, my son, Sam, where's my son?" And they thought she had a child. They went back looking in the snow, and a family member got there and said, "Oh no, that's her dog, Sam." And she was having, so I mean, this is a family member, and when they bring their family member to you, their brain also is on fire. They are also not hearing you or connecting with you or seeing those cues or clues. And so how can we create an environment where we can leverage that? And at the peak of a crisis, I teach lots of humor classes on this, but in effect, the humor can fall flat. So it's not that I'm saying this is for every single moment. This is not the universal cure. But just like you have many tools that you use to care for pets, this is a tool that you keep in your tool belt, because sometimes it's going to be not just the right tool, but the best tool or the most important tool you can use.
I like you said, the payoff. You talked about that. That's what we're looking for. And the end in mind, like why? And there is a payoff. You said it's that energy that you're going to gain from reconnecting things in the brain and being able to handle more than you ever thought possible. And you talked about the relationships that are involved, and you talk about clients, team, and self. It's all those things. If we look at, clients that come into the veterinary practice with their animals, one of the biggest things they have a tough time with is the prices. The veterinarian has a tough time with price of services. Yeah. Maybe not the client, but the veterinarian does, because the animal can't pay the bill and they want to fix the animal. And so, I think how can not that you're humorous in that situation, it could be a sick animal or whatnot, but how does that apply? Like, what does that do for you in that situation? And I'm trying to say it this way because I know how my veterinarians are going to think, right? They're like, I got a sick animal coming in, I can't be funny. And you're not saying that at all. You're not saying that at all.
Yes, yeah. And I'm so glad you brought this up. This is such an important point. I mentioned distraction. I mentioned reframing. Another is resilience, because when you have that gap, in this case, it's I want to take care of this animal. I want to fix this animal, whatever that is. And here's reality. And the gap is they can't afford it. And what does that do to how I feel? And when you are in that state, you are, again, now we're creating that cascade of neurotransmitters that are really wearing on you. They wear on your mental health, your physical health, your psychological, your social, even your spiritual health. And so what I say in this instance isn't how to use humor to try to fix that situation, because we can't fix that situation in terms of, there's going to be the people who can't afford the care. And that
Absolutely.
is always going to feel horrible.
Yes.
But how can you use this to build yourself back up? Even in that moment, it may not be appropriate to pull in to thinking about, a happier memory or something to reframe. But when you go home that evening, might I suggest, rather than turning on the news, more cascade of neurotransmitters that are negative, or turning on and watching Saving Private Ryan, distraction, but again, more cascade of negative neurotransmitters, to bathe yourself in 22 minutes of, for me, Big Bang Theory, Modern Family, SNL. I mean, there's you've never had more opportunities to tap into what amuses you. It may not be something on TV. Maybe it's phoning a friend. Maybe it's looking through, I'm a big fan of David Sedaris. I'll put on, one of his audio books or something. But the importance is that we're doing this with intentionality, and we're doing it with consistency, because it is building a muscle. It is rewiring your brain, and that's not going to happen with a one-time occasion. But for those who are interested in the science, reach out to me. I'm happy to send you all sorts of research. We know that repeated use of experiencing humor yourself improves your white blood cells. It improves your immune system, short-term, mid-range, long-term. It decreases inflammation in our body, which is, the underlying issue for heart disease and all sorts of autoimmune diseases and endocrine diseases and things like that. It gives us back our bandwidth physically and mentally. And so in these kinds of instances, again, it's not about entertaining. It's not about using humor to entertain that person so that you get them laughing so hard that they don't notice that they can't afford the care.
Yes.
It's not going to happen. But in this instance, this is medicine for you. And a merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a brittle spirit drieth the bones. We've known that since, biblical times. We've actually known it since before biblical times with others who have talked about how this is good medicine for the body. But we have gotten so caught up in life that is going not just 100 miles an hour, but 250 miles an hour. And we don't stop, take a breath, look for the whimsy around us, look for things that make us smile. This is one of the things that I encourage people to do, is to stack the deck. And what do I mean by that? I mean, put the odds in your favor. How do you increase the likelihood that you can experience more humor? Or for you may have some things in your office that amuse you. That it may be some books, it may be some posters, it might be a bulletin board with the people and their pets, the contest, who looks most like their pet. I mean, there's all different kinds of ways that you can build these kinds of things in. The people that you hang out with. There are people who bring joy when they enter a room. There are people who bring joy when they leave it. You know, how can you spend more time with the people who uplift you and kind of minimize the time with the people who drain the life out of you? But again, it's not about just solving an insolvable problem by making people laugh. It's about, how do I use it for myself as medicine? Does that make sense?
You can't help it. Oh, yeah, you can't help anybody else out, period, if you're not taking care of self. And as a veterinarian is going to go from that tough diagnosis to a regular exam or a new puppy in the next exam, coming in, right? Where you get this happy client, not a brand new puppy. Is there anything better than a new puppy? Except for the, peeing everywhere. It's like, right? But that joy, that smile, right? That humor a new puppy brings, just clumsy, all those things show you how it's kind of a correlation, right? We're willing to put up with a pee in our house for a short term because the little puppy's funny and exciting. So, I mean, that's kind of like a lot of what's going on here. Is that another correlation at all, kind of?
I mean, you're focusing on the positive, and that is minimizing the negative. And it's things are bad, things are going to happen, and things are going to suck. And if we only focus on those things, our brain shows us more of those things. There's maybe familiar with the reticular activating system. It's a little finger-like projection in the brain, and it's a filter. And the brain is non-judgmental. It says, I'll show you more of what you give your attention to. So it's like the internet. If I'm on the internet and I go to find a pair of shoes, I was on Zappos and it was like, oh, these boots are so cute, until I saw the price. And I said, I guess I'll pass on that. And I went to a different website, but on the side are those boots. And I went to another, and on the side were boots and a matching purse. And I went to another, and it's those boots and a purse and another pair of shoes like them. And the internet wasn't like, oh, I love your taste in clothing. The internet was, you gave your attention to this, we'll show you more. And that's how your brain is. If you're only showing your brain the negative, it'll say, this is what you're interested in, I'll show you more. And this is for the people who say, but there's nothing funny happening in my life. It's all around you, but your brain isn't showing you that. Your brain is showing you other things. I was in a dressing room not too long ago trying on a pair of jeans. I never saw the woman next to me, but in the next dressing room, I heard her moan, good Lord, if this dress were any tighter, it would fit me like a mammogram. That was the funniest thing I'd heard all day. And I stopped and I wrote it down. One, I heard it because my radar is always looking for funny. The other was the importance of just jotting it down, reinforcing it. And I forgot about it until a week later when I was in the bottom of my backpack and I found that piece of paper, and it was like I could relive that moment again and then put it in a place where I could capture that. Because sometimes going back through a journal, I call them memories of mirth. When I remember a funny story, I have a place where I write that down. And on those days where life is heavy, or maybe I had to euthanize somebody's pet while they're just falling apart, or, it was too late to save another animal, or somebody who just didn't have the means. I mean, there's so many things that tear at us, but to go back and have that reminiscence later at a point in time and use that as medicine, because it really is medicine for the soul.
Yeah, well, you talked about the neuroplasticity, and I mean, how much research is there on life expectancy?
Tons.
And so, you think about that, it's like it's a life extender.
Yes.
Also. Actually,
yeah, there has been some indications, because we know that chronic inflammation can shorten telomeres. So, and telomeres, on the edges of the cells can indicate longevity. But if we decrease that inflammation, we don't shorten the telomeres. So, we might not be adding years. I tend to think we do. but we at least are not taking years away by doing that. And I talked about distraction, reframing, resilience. And one more I'd like to add is relating. And that is how you connect with other people. And this is good for yourself. We are social beings. And when we become overwhelmed or stressed or depressed, we tend to isolate. Humor is a wonderful way to stay connected. We know that whether you're looking for a leader or a lover or somebody to work with, sense of humor is a trait that people are looking for in others. We know it increases likability. We know that it can increase trust. It's like a puppy or a dog or a cat. You know, when they are in total trust, they're flipping on their backs with their paws up in the air, rub my belly, you know, and exposing themselves. And when you think about having a really good laugh with somebody, we throw back our head. We're exposing our neck. And in essence saying, I'm safe. But even with our stories, our humorous stories, especially stories that show a little bit of self-effacing humor, a moment where you weren't perfect and perhaps did something that was laughable, you create that sense of trust. And who do people want to work with? It's people they know, like, and trust. We can increase that likability. We can increase that trust. We actually, our brain produces, you know, or through the neurotransmitters, we produce a hormone oxytocin, which is the cuddle hormone. And we know that it's between moms and babies. But now with our science, we know that people who exchange humor also experience that exchange of oxytocin, which makes people feel bonded. And as an aside, if for no other reason, studies have also shown people who judge someone as having a better sense of humor also judges them as more attractive, better looking, younger.
Yeah.
Couples who experience shared humor report better relationships, stronger relationships. So there's so many benefits and upsides to practicing this. I'm trying to find one that would say, no, it's not worth it.
Hard.
I don't think so. Yeah. You know, as long as you are being intentional, as being mindful, some people are afraid they may cross the line or may not be seen as being taken seriously. And a lot of that is understanding, again, it's the intentionality, humor by choice, not just by chance. When is that right moment? And the more you nurture your own sense of humor, the more authentically it will come across, and the better timing, and not just timing in terms of don't step on your laugh line. I'm talking about that moment in time where it is the right moment to use the humor. So it is such a powerful connector.
Well, it's interesting. I think when you meet someone, especially if you're like, I found this as, you know, trying to sell services, right, to somebody, and you get real serious. A lot of times there's not a whole lot of humor because you're nervous, but then when that person cracks a joke, you miss it. I mean, you just completely miss that other person's joke and an opportunity to connect, like you did, you know. And so I think that is such a powerful thing, and that always would frustrate me, like, oh, they were joking. You know, I took it serious, like I was being serious. So that's huge. So, wow, the discussion around everything here, how applicable it is, how important it is. I think that if we think about what are some habits, joy, you know, what's a little bit of action plan that someone could take away. And, you know, for instance, I think that one thing that came to my mind that you and I discussion about was we're both guilty of being too future focused a lot. That we're not, you know, spending time reflecting very well. And just off that conversation is one thing I've known that about myself. I'm trying to get better, continue to work on it. But you know, what are some things like that you'd recommend to a listener today to say, yeah, you know, here's some actionable things you can do, simple, trust me, right? That this will work, that yes, your sponge is full probably, but this is a chance to get some more capacity. What are we going to do for them?
In terms of humor, I encourage people to give themselves permission, first of all, and even more than permission, to set up an expectation. Tap your reticular activating system and basically say to yourself, show me show me the funny, show me the whimsy, show me something amusing today, and create that expectation and to be open to it, to pay that forward, to reinforce it with another shot of dopamine by doing this act of kindness, by not only experiencing the humor yourself, but then sharing it with another person. I encourage folks to even have an accountability partner. Who's somebody that you could, at first I thought I was doing it for them, and then I realized that I was the one that's getting the most benefit, was because I look for the humor to send them every day. I have a friend who, she's 50 years old and has turned into a cat lady. She's single, no children, and her life is her cat. And oh my goodness, is there an abundance of cat memes or what? So every day, there is that exchange. And what I'm doing is saying, I'm thinking of you. I care about you. That because I have sent you something that I know you will enjoy. To, as we mentioned earlier, to stack the deck, to increase the likelihood. How can you manipulate your environment with things that make you laugh? In our room here, I have a caricature of me. Just that cracks me up. I have things all over that are cues to remind me, that reinforce this behavior. There are all sorts of opportunities in terms of classes, and there's an Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor, which is a nonprofit that I love, that is a group of people who look at means of applying and implementing therapeutic humor. I have master classes that I do. And I also, for myself or others, to find somebody whom you can trust. I think that everybody benefits at some point in their life from having a coach and or therapist. I love being a coach. I love helping people explore that gap. I also have an assessment, and you've had the opportunity to take that assessment, where we look at non-conscious habits of thinking, because we have thousands and thousands, 65 to 70,000 thoughts a day, almost all of which are non-conscious, and the majority of which are negative, and we're totally unaware of them. How do we recreate neural pathways so that we have thoughts that serve us instead of thoughts that sabotage us? And I can tell just by statistics and numbers that far too many veterinarians are letting their thoughts sabotage their happiness, sabotage their productivity, sabotage their life. And if I can be help, I invite people to reach out and have a virtual coffee or take the assessment. It would be my honor to serve them.
I'd love to see that. And we'll post on the website and on social media the Habit Finders link, and anything else where we can reach out. And of course, people can reach out to me to get in touch with you, but we'll have those links out there. I want people to reach out, because it's interesting. I don't know how many veterinary conferences I've been to. There's a lot of negativity, because they're overwhelming in different areas. Interesting. I've been to some that there isn't. It was like, it almost surprised me. I was like, wow, this is refreshing. Like, these people are just doing their thing, and it was totally different. So, but yeah, when I was at a meeting and someone brought up the statistics about the death by suicide, and said their veterinary is number 3, and people in the room corrected them. No, we're number 2. And it's like, but the way it was said was like, wow, you are like, yeah, this is a bad thing. And, I'm trying to phrase this gently, right, to not offend anybody with it, but it's almost like, wow, you don't realize, I think what you're saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what this is saying is that they're dwelling on that because that came out that way. And instead of like, what can we do? So I think that's what this is like. Instead of what can we do, or just focus on what happened.
Yeah.
And what negative could happen instead of what can we do.
And there are action steps that every single person listening or watching this can take. There are opportunities to make things better. And especially if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if some people that I speak with on a regular basis when I'm doing these assessments are describing their lives as empty, as hopeless, it's like you said, there's a lot of energy in our world right now that is spinning people into a negative spiral. And so don't miss the opportunity to reach out and do something for yourself because you
Yeah.
deserve it. Oh my goodness, you are an
Yes.
incredible, valuable human being, and there are people and animals who need you. And so
Yes.
that step.
And we need humor. There's no question about it. Okay. This is the question I like to ask at the end of the podcast here is that, all right, imagine we're done. We've hit
Okay.
stop on the record, that the computer goes down, right? And you're like a half hour later, like, I really wish I would have said,
What would I say? What I see most often that, I guess for lack of a better word, I would say disappoints me is that people underestimate the power of their thoughts. They underestimate the power of their humor. And again, it's not all about humor. My business is about the power of thought and the spirit of humor, but don't underestimate the power that you have and the power to implement change, and that it doesn't have to feel like a punishment. It can be fun again. It can be fun
I
again.
love that. We are so guilty of underestimating ourselves and overestimating the other person when that person's underestimating themselves too. So that is a great point. I love that. Wow, Karyn, the timing on this couldn't be better. We need this right now. In a place where division sells in this country right now, we need to be coming back together. And humor is a sure good way to do it. It's funny you brought up, being funny makes you better looking. You kind of look at like Jim Carrey. He's not a bad looking guy by any means, but some of the, people he's dated and like or been married to, you're like, what do they see in that guy? Like he's not the sexy guy on the People magazine cover. He's not Ryan, or you take like a Ryan Reynolds that's funny and pretty good looking. You're like, you son of a bitch, So there's so much in here, and my mind is just full of great thoughts from the conversation today. I do this podcast for people, but just like you said, I do it for me too. This really is always important to me. I get a lot out of it. I hope the listener gets a bunch out of it. And again, what's the website they can go to find you?
To send people to Linktree. It's
Linktree.ee
/Karyn Buxman. There's just lots of different tools and prizes of unspeakable value they can find.
That's a great place. So they can get out there. And again, I'll have your website on my, my website, my social media as we put this out. And of course, linked in the podcasts themselves, you'll be able to find that. I did the Habit Finder, like you said. It was insightful. There's things that you know about yourself, right? And it just goes, oh yeah, okay, yep. It just because it's unconscious, right? You like have that and when you see it, you're like, and we talked it through, like, yeah, So it was. And what's amazing about the Habit Finder, listener, is that it doesn't take long. It is. It's you can knock it out pretty quick, and the results you get are well worth it. So, hey, I'm going to stop there unless you got something left. I'll leave you.
Just add about that, because you say that we so often have these insights about ourselves, and there are a number of things where you were like, yeah, I knew that, or I suspected that, and then there was a few who was like, But I think that what it also helps us see is how one area of our lives impacts another, and how maybe we have a frustration in one area of our lives that it's about us personally or something that's very personal to me. But then you see on the assessment, how's that affecting your ability to be empathetic to others or compassionate to others? We sometimes miss that relationship as to how all of these things tie in to one another and can pull us down in other areas of our lives that we didn't even recognize.
Well, I'm sorry. It's like I said at the end of the podcast, but I have to. Humor is a connection everyone can relate to. We all take information differently, right? There's people that are visual, people that need to see, read it, hear it. People do feelings in their gut, how they make decisions. People do analytical decisions. But really, humor's humor. I mean, it's very rare that it's like when there's humor that people aren't laughing together, right? It's like we all can laugh together, and that's an agreed upon thing. So what a connector. What a great thing. Wonderful to have you on. I really appreciate your time. I know your time is valuable, and for you to spend time with a listener today, it means a lot to me. And listener, if you like what we've been doing today, please like and subscribe to the channel here, The Better Podcast. That would mean a lot to help spread the word. The more likes we have, it helps spread the word. I don't have advertisements on this. I do this for the industry and for people, and to help spread good word for those that need a different viewpoint out there. So thank you so much for your time today, and wish you all the best. Thank you, Karyn.